Hello, both sides of the conversation family. We welcome you to this virtual space crafted especially for you. My name is Jada Curry, and I'm both sides of the conversation's marketing director and graphics design specialist. I want to take some time to ground us all as a community into this space we are about to open up in, so let's go through our community standards. Both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation, so we ask that you all be respectful of that. We also ask that you be respectful of each panelist, host, and participant. We do encourage healthy debates and conversations. Don't personalize anything with anyone. This includes name-calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming. This will not be allowed or tolerated. Your perspective is yours. It is not a prescription. You do not have to agree, but show respect. These community standards apply to all of our live shows and any virtual spaces that we hold on social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We want to make sure that we are caring for each other as a community. This is our priority in all of our endeavors as both sides of the conversation. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's show and continue to stay in touch with us via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or all of them. All right, thank you for listening and see you soon.
Welcome everyone to Both Sides of the Conversation Live. We meet here virtually every Sunday at 2 p.m. I am your co-host, Brittany Doyle, and I would like to introduce you to the executive director and host of the show, John Henry.
Welcome everybody to Both Sides of the Conversation. We are happy to be here today. Sunday, we're going to have a powerful conversation. We're talking about breast cancer awareness. Very, very important conversation for our community. So looking forward to talking with today's panelists and guests. As you all know, Both Sides of the Conversation, we are out in the community today. We have 3 live events going on at the same time. So I'm moving around through community. So I'm not in the studio today. So please forgive the Wi-Fi or any technical issues that you all hear today. But with that being said, I want to get through a couple of community announcements and then move on to today's conversation. First of all, I want to give a huge shout to our Booker T. Washington family and Wise Health SF for being out in the community this Friday. We had a phenomenal Fillmore Wellness Day. Community showed up. There was a number of organizations that came out to support that event. We was able to connect with the community. Very, very powerful, impactful stuff. UCSF, DPH, a number of community organizations was out there doing COVID testing, COVID vaccinations, talking to the doctors, and a number of other community resources. So phenomenal event. Way to go to all the community coming out. I had a great time out there with community, and thank Miss Brittany for being out there as well. We had a blast. So thank you to community. Thank you, Booker T. Washington and their leadership. Thank you to Shakira for putting together a phenomenal event. We're looking for more as we're going to continue to impact our communities and go to the community. We're going to meet people where they at and not wait for them to come to our location. So great job on that phenomenal event. Then I want to give a huge shout out to East Oakland Collective and to the East Bay Regional Parks. Yesterday, we was out in the community with them, cleaning, networking with community, making sure that our community stay clean. We can't just complain about what's going on in our communities. We have to get out there and do something. So it's nice just to be out with community yesterday to clean Our team was out there. Renata was out there making sure that we do our part to help our communities. We was able to reach out to Lauren Taylor, one of the candidates, the councilman that's running for the mayor, as well as Tara Reid. So phenomenal event. It was nice to be out in community. There was a number of events taking place this weekend. It is busy here in the Bay Area. For you all that don't know, the weather was nice. We have the Blue Angels flying around, so you might hear the Blue Angels in the background going on. We got our San Francisco Giants in the playoffs, and they're doing their thing. And there's just been a number of events taking place across the city and across the Bay Area. So shout out to those organizations. Want to give a huge shout out to Black Men Enhance for having their annual breast cancer awareness softball game. It was phenomenal to see the community out with the ladies and the fellas of the community playing softball to continue to bring breast cancer awareness. And today we're going to have that conversation as well. The Baby Opera House and Emoji Family, they had events going on yesterday. There's been events going on all over the city. We wasn't able to make it to all of them, but we want to shout them organizations out and let them know we appreciate you for getting our community involved. And today we are out at 3rd Street at the Mendel Plaza for the Humbre Black Party with the San Francisco African American Arts and Culture District. We are live out there right now. So any community that want to come out, our both sides of conversation tents are out there. Our team is out there greeting and engaging with the community. So we'll be out there, and then I'll be headed shortly here to come celebrate the 75th birthday of Dr. Carolyn Scott, phenomenal commissioner of San Francisco, and we're delighted to be there. So we'll be getting over there shortly as we get through today's conversation. With that said, let me go through the community announcements and then turn over to Brittany so we can get today's conversation going. Governor Newsom signed the Economic Recovery Bill in Alameda County. It plans to send a $4 billion investment to create the county's largest small and medium-sized enterprise relief grant program, a $6.2 billion tax reduction for SME financed by salary protection programs and pandemic regulations. So that's just phenomenal news. More resources are coming to community. Governor Newsom is signing more and more bills to help impact our community. As we talked about last week, there's a $3 billion investment with mental health taking place. So again, we're just happy to see some of these investments coming back to our community so that our communities can be impacted. Also, the California Public School District and the state of California passed for the public school restrooms to put free menstrual products under the bill signed by Governor Newsom. This move comes as women rights advocates push nationwide for affordable access to menstrual pads, tampons, and other items for female products. So that's just nice to see that our schools are catching on, and hopefully other folks in the state will also catch on to help support our women. As we hear at both sides of the conversation, we are always about advocating for our women in the community. So just nice to see those things happening. California becomes the first state to mandate high school ethics study courses. I know this has been a long fight with our school districts about getting these ethics studies in our schools. This past Friday, Governor Newsom and the Assembly, they passed Assembly Bill 101, which will require all local education agencies and charter schools to serve grades 9 through 12 with these academic ethics studies. So phenomenal information for our young people. We have to educate them culturally and get them appropriate with the information and education. So that's great to see that. Also in California, Black family, one of the Black families are getting their stolen property, beachfront property back. The descendants of Charles and Willard Bruce are nearing the end of the century-long fight to reclaim their rightfully heirs of the property at this beachfront in Los Angeles County. I think it was worth, I think they said estimated $70 million. The property was originally purchased for $1,200 in 1912 by a Black family, and it was somehow stole a generational wealth through the process of the housing and taxes in the city or whatever. But just nice to see some kind of equity and justice coming back to the people. Definitely very, very powerful stuff, and happy for that family and for those heirs to get that property that they so long, so deserve. Some of the community announcements that's happening, as I said earlier, we're going to be at Dr. Scott's 75th birthday. We'll be headed over there shortly. The Bayview, the New Roots Theater Festival is coming up October 16th to 17th from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Bravo Theater Center at 2781 24th Street in San Francisco. Our own Rodney Jackson of Mega Black is going to be a part of this. If you want to see some Black theater, you want to see some talented young people, please go out and support this event. This Dreamkeeper initiative is going to be very, very important, and both sides of the conversation will be out there supporting this event as well. So looking forward to seeing community as well to come out, and we'll get the information on the screen, how you could buy tickets and things of that nature. And we'll have them back on the week before. The San Francisco African American Early Childhood Educators will be hosting a free public event for youth Sunday, October 17th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. located at Lee Avenue and Ocean, as well as the information will be coming up on the screen. They're doing a phenomenal job over there in the OMI, organizing, getting our young people and community involved. So we're looking forward to collaborating with them soon. But shout out to our OMI folks for doing phenomenal work for the community over there, bringing back the services to the Black OMI. I love what they're doing over there. Maurice Rivers, Dahlia Fitzpatrick, Mary Evelyn's. It's a number of folks. Renard, Mr. Brother Monroe from Invest Black. They are part of that new OMI restructuring that's happening over there. And we're proud of what's going on with them. Yesterday, phenomenal event. The Rafiki House, in partnership with a number of organizations, had the Pregnancy Pop-Up Village. That took place yesterday at 1201 Mendale. That event was a phenomenal event. I heard a lot of good things was happening over there, so just great to see them out there as well. The Av Bar Ethnic Toy Drive is happening. If you would like to give toys, they are starting to collect toys for the young folks for this holiday season. Saturday, October 23rd from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 1607 Ocean Avenue. If you have toys or you would like to donate to help some young folks out, please go to that toy drop and drop off some toys for community. Also, we're going to have the Ocean Avenue Halloween Block Party. That is Saturday, October 23rd from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Faxon Ave between Ocean Avenue. Phenomenal event. Our brother Maurice Rivers is going to be putting that event together. We'll get his contact information on the screen. If you want to reach out, set up a booth, or be a part of that, please reach out to him. Phenomenal brother doing things to impact our community. With that being said, our both sides of the conversation announcements. Every Tuesday, we have our Hidden Gem segment at 7 p.m. That's where we highlight our Black and brown businesses, as well as our community leaders that are doing positive things to impact our community. So if you would like to be a part of that, or if you know somebody who has a business that want to come on and get some free promotion, free advertisement on our Hidden Gem segment, please have them go to our website. But that's every Tuesday at 7 p.m. You can go to our website at bothsidesoftheconversation.org or www.bsotc.org. And then our Educational Thursday, every Thursday at 6 p.m. we have amazing community folks coming on doing PowerPoint presentations to educate our community about what's going on with information that sometimes our community can't get. We're going to have San Francisco Police Officer Dudley's come on and talk about African-American and underserved communities and how to build equity. So this is going to be a phenomenal educational presentation. Looking forward to that. And then our upcoming Sunday conversations for the rest of the month are going to be impactful. Great conversations we're looking forward to. On the 17th, we're going to have the Black Panther Party Legacy Keepers coming on. They're going to be celebrating their 55th anniversary. So we are honored here at both sides of the conversation to have our Black Panther Party Legacy Keepers come on and celebrate with them. So that's going to be a great Sunday conversation next Sunday. And then 10/24, that Sunday, we'll be talking about domestic violence. As you all know, this is October. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well. And we'll be having a powerful conversation with some domestic violence survivors, as well as some organizations that provide services for domestic violence services. So we're looking forward to that conversation as well. And then the last Sunday of the month, we're going to be talking about microaggressions in the workplace. Very important conversation we need to have with community, and we're looking forward to having that conversation as well. So powerful stuff coming up. We're looking forward. And before we go, today is International Mental Health Awareness Day across the world. Here at both sides of the conversation, we are always advocating for mental health. We're trying to take away the stigma. We're trying to make it cool, and we're trying to get these resources to our community. So just want to say shout out to everybody that's doing the work with mental health services. Please, community, go out and seek those treatments and those services as we're trying to heal our community every day. And we'll continue to do our part here on this platform because we believe through communication, a healing process begins. So with that being said, I'm going to land my plane, close my mouth, and get to moving back in the community. I'll be a part of this conversation. I'll be in and out, but I'll turn it over to Miss Brittany and to the rest of the team to start introducing today's guests, going through some of the questions, going through some of the statistics, and talking with community about breast cancer awareness. We want to thank our guests, our panelists, and to our both sides of the conversation team that's all around the Bay Area right now doing events for us. We thank you all, and we're going to continue to do our part. So with that being said, Ms. Brittany, go ahead and take us off and get our guests up here, and we'll start today's conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have fun, John Henry. We are going to miss you. So as you know, today we have a very powerful show. We're going to be talking about breast cancer. Breast cancer is the leading cause of cancer for women outside of lung cancer. According to statistics, 1 out of 8 U.S. women develop invasive breast cancer. Although there are campaigns and studies to fight the disease, many individuals are still impacted. Now, in the U.S., the lifetime risk for breast cancer in Caucasian women is 13%, 12% for African American, 11% in Asian and Pacific Islander population, and 8% for the American Indian and Alaska Native population. Education and early detection can improve morbidity rates in all women. The symptoms vary from pain, lumps, swelling, skin changes, and can be asymptomatic. Swelling can be all or some parts of the breast, skin irritations, nipple pain, and nipples turning inward, redness, scaliness, or thickening of the nipple or breast skin. A nipple discharge other than breast milk can be seen, and a lump in the underarm area. Some of the symptoms may be signs of less serious conditions that are not cancerous, such as an infection or a cyst, which is also very common. It is strongly advised for anyone who may be experiencing these symptoms to seek medical attention as soon as possible. Now, the exact cause for some breast cancer types are unknown, but the risk factors can include family history, hormonal changes. Your age can actually put you more at risk if you're over the age of 40. Personal history of breast cancer or cancer in one breast can increase the chances of having cancer in the other breast. Your lifestyle can play a really big role, and this includes excess drinking of alcohol, environmental factors, including exposure to radiation, obesity and being overweight, menarche, having periods at a younger age, and menopause, not having it at an older age. Pregnancy, becoming pregnant at an older age, or even never being pregnant can put you at risk. Hormone use, including long-term contraceptives or postmenopausal hormone therapy. Now, preventative measures involves healthy habits such as eating healthy, nutritious foods, avoiding alcohol, practicing gentle exercises, but of course you have to get your doctor's advice on which one is right for you. Just having regular visits to your doctor, staying on top of your examinations, having any sort of like preventative surgery may also be recommended for high-risk women. And then just regular routine screening may reduce the prevalence of breast cancer. Now, when we talk about the problem, according to clinical data, in 2021, an estimated 281,550 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in women in the US, along with 49,290 new cases of non-invasive breast cancer. Although there is a decline in morbidity, about 43,600 women in the US are expected to succumb in 2021 from breast cancer. Now, when we look at the impacts that it has among Black women, we see that African American women have a 31% breast cancer mortality rate, which is the highest of any US racial or ethnic group. Among women younger than 45, breast cancer incidence is higher among African American women than white women. Younger women in general and younger African American women in particular are more likely to present with the triple negative subtype of the disease, a subtype that is both more aggressive and associated with a higher mortality. And this diagnosis is more often in American women of African descent than in those of European descent, here specifically in the United States. And then when we talk about environmental impacts, there's the products that we have to watch out for, like skin lighteners, hair relaxers that are marketed towards specifically Black women, even like the Brazilian blowout treatments and acrylic nails. These are carcinogen elements that can contribute to breast cancer. And once again, I said is more often marketed to Black women. So according to clinical experts, when we look at the decrease in these morbidity rates among women across the board in the United States, these decreases are a result of early detection from regular screening and the advancement in treatments and options. And so when we talk about the solutions, it's really important that we, express the importance of getting screened, which can lead to early diagnosis, and then, taking part in tests that monitor your health if you're at risk. These are very critical when it comes to diagnosis and treatments. It is recommended to get breast cancer screening every 6 to 12 months, as early as being 25 years old. Many women begin getting mammograms as early as 30. So if you have a family history of breast cancer or have been tested for a specific gene, the BRCA1 or 2, it is highly encouraged to seek medical attention. In addition, if anyone has had radiation to the chest between the ages of 10 to 30 years old, you should be closely monitored by your healthcare team as well. There are a lot of resources that take place here in the Bay Area, and they will actually be posted onto our YouTube chat. But just to call them out, there's Here's Breast Cancer, the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, the Breast Cancer Emergency Fund, Bay Area Cancer Connections, UCSF Breast Cancer Prevention Program. All of these resources, but once again, you'll be able to find into the chat on our YouTube page. So we have a great panel for us in store for us today. So as I call each person's name, I would like for them to come to the table and you just give a brief introduction about yourself and why you feel it's important that you are here today. And we are going to start with Dr. Kathy Lewis Thomas. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. As she said, my name is Dr. Kathy Lewis Thomas. I am a college instructor at the community college here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I am a two-time survivor, and I think it's important to be here. I am the mother of two daughters, 28 and 26. I'm raising my great niece, who is 17, and I am the grandmother of two, a 9-year-old granddaughter and a 2-year-old grandson.
Thank you so much for joining us. The next person I'm going to call to the table is Tiffany Gunter.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I am Tiffany Gunter. I live in Houston, Texas. I'm a registered nurse, and I am a survivor. December will make 2 years since my diagnosis, but I'm counting myself as a survivor. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much again for joining us. Next, we have Catherine Thomas. Catherine, are you there? Okay, we will come back to Catherine Thomas. She was there earlier. All right, and so I also would like to introduce our host, our co-host for today, who's going to be joining us because, as you know, John is going to be out in the field. And so we have LaToya Pitcher, who will be joining us today as well. Hopefully, Catherine will come back. All right, so we'll go ahead and kick off the show. Once again, thank you all for joining us. I wanted to start off by sharing our experiences. So now we know we have two survivors on the show, and I wanted to hear what was your experience from the time of diagnosis throughout the treatment. I'm kind of curious to hear, what your process was and what it was like navigating the medical system and the type of resources that you encountered, and just any sort of feelings of support that you would like to share as well. And Tiffany, we can go ahead and start with you.
Great. I am at 40, I had my first mammogram, and I had moved from Nebraska to Texas. And so it was time for me to have another mammogram. I went through my usual well woman exam. She did a breast exam, and she suggested as I was leaving, she's like, you really need to get a mammogram. And I was like, I don't really like mammograms. They're really uncomfortable. And she was like, well, so breast cancer is uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, fine. So I got a mammogram, a screening mammogram. And I knew from my previous mammogram that it was taking too long to get the results. I got the results back and they told me that there was an area of concern. So I really thought that I thought that the person that was doing the mammogram, in my head, I made it out to be, they had an issue and they weren't doing their job correctly. I tried to make sure that none of this was breast cancer. This was all someone else's fault. And I went in for my diagnostic mammogram, and I could tell on the mammography tech's face that there was something there. I was able to actually go right in to see a radiologist. They did an ultrasound. The doctor sat me up on the side of the bed, and she said, "I'm concerned." She said, "You're Black, you are 44 years old, and you don't have children. I'm very concerned. We're going to do a biopsy today." And so just from there, she told me, "I am 99% sure that this is cancer, but we're going to do a biopsy to see where we are." She told me she was very concerned about it being triple negative. So I did the biopsy and I got the results back 3 days later. Thankfully, it was not triple negative. I am HER2 positive and HER2 negative and HRPR positive. So that meant that ahead of me, I had some surgery to do. And after that point, I learned that I had to have a mastectomy. I decided to go with a double mastectomy because I was 44 and I didn't want to look back and have to think about this anymore. And so I chose to have a double mastectomy. I then went into endocrine therapy, which then put me into menopause. And then I had reconstruction. I had surgical reconstruction. And then a year later, my oncologist really thought that it'd be really important for me to have a hysterectomy. So I ended up having a total hysterectomy. And I had that just this past summer. But I recognize that as hard as it's been, as hard as it is for other women, I realize that my road has probably been pretty easy. But at the same time, I also, the psychological effect that it's had on me has probably been harder than the actual physical impact. I think I spent the first year being thankful that I had a cancer that wasn't going to kill me. But now I think I'm now starting to deal with like, oh my gosh, I had cancer. So I think I'm in this period of trying to figure it out and try to get past that part. But at the bottom line, the bottom line is that I'm healthy. I'm going to be fine. But it is something that's super important to me now. I never thought about it before. I never thought that this would be something I had to deal with. I don't have breast cancer in my family at all. So I am very fortunate. I'm very fortunate that a screening mammogram led to me getting back in for a diagnostic mammogram. And I found it stage 1 breast cancer. And here I am 2 years later.
Thank you for sharing. And you said something very important because you said that you didn't have any history of breast cancer, like it wasn't in your family. And
Correct.
Typically, if it's not environmental, then it's typically something that passes down through generation to generation. Mm-hmm. And then you say you have no history and it just came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So I think that's like real interesting.
It's very, very surprising.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Dr. Kathy Lewis Thomas, thank you again for joining the show. We'd like to hear your survivor story as well.
Well, actually, at the age of 20 was my first diagnosis in 1989. At the time, it was very uncommon to hear of anyone at 20 years old being diagnosed with breast cancer. But I'll never forget the day that I initially found out. It was October 8th. I went in for a biopsy, and I know a lot of people look at September 8th. And I know a lot of people look at September 11th as, a day of mourning. But for me, it's also a day of renewed life because that was the day at 20 years old that I underwent a radical mastectomy. At 20, it was very surprising. But at the same token, I was under the impression that I was invincible at that age. But having a total mastectomy at 20 years old was a life-changing event. And at that time, being that things are so different now than they were then, they did not encourage reconstruction immediately after surgery. I waited 10 years. So I was 30 by the time that I had reconstruction. And So at the time I did saline implants, and so for 29 years I was in remission, chemo and everything, and I was in remission until I 49. When I turned 49, they found two masses in the right breast. And so at that time, I decided that I would opt for a different treatment. I decided that I would not get treatment here in Louisiana. So I consulted with MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas, and took the drive as often as I needed to go to Houston. And I am so thankful and glad that I did. They were not satisfied with the reconstruction that I had here. So I went through several revisions. So from 2018 until last year, I underwent 11 surgeries. But I'm here today to tell you about it. In 2017, I became a widow. So I had a lot of stress on me. And then 1 year and 1 day after his death anniversary was when I found out that I had two masses in the right breast. And so, to my knowledge, I am the only one here in this area who's undergone a lymph node transplant. I went through a lymph node transplant in 2019 because I had developed lymphedema in my left arm, which is where I initially had cancer in the left breast. And so at the same time, while I was going through everything with the right breast, I went through the tram flap for reconstruction. I went through nipple reconstruction as well as having the lymph node transplant. So it's very unique. When I mentioned it to a therapist here in Lake Charles, she tried to discourage me from doing it, saying that there was not a lot of information on it. And she thought that I should just stick with manual lymphatic treatment. And I was so into my doctors at MD Anderson, I said I was going to go for it. I felt like I had nothing to lose. I've already been on the other side of the coin. So I just went for it, and I'm very happy and pleased with my treatments, and look forward to visiting with my doctors and responding with them. And so far, everything is going well. But yes, I've been dealing with this situation since I was 20, and I am 52 now. And I am thankful that I'm here to tell my story, because when I was initially diagnosed at 20, I was told that I would probably live 5 years if I did not have the mastectomy and chemotherapy back then. So here I am 32 years later and can still tell you about it.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Both powerful stories. Now, before we move into more questions, I want to introduce Catherine Thomason. Catherine, we're just giving a brief introduction of ourselves and what we're bringing to the table today in this discussion around breast cancer. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself. Can you hear me, Catherine? Catherine. Okay, maybe she can't hear me. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk about the symptoms. What sort of symptoms did you ladies experience that led you to go to the doctors?
I actually didn't have any symptoms at all. I didn't recognize that there was a lump until I was laying down having the ultrasound, and the doctor let me feel it. But I had
sorry,
to
I didn't hear. I didn't hear anything after Dr. Kathy.
Okay, can you hear us now?
I think I'm having a connection difficulty, although I'm seeing some people fine.
Okay, but you can't hear us.
Did you want me to introduce myself? Is that?
Yes, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Yes. Go ahead. All right.
Okay, sorry. Hi, my name is Catherine Thompson. I am with an organization called Zero Breast Cancer. We are based in the San Francisco Bay Area, but we serve people not only across California, but across the country. And we actually have quite a large audience outside of the US in Spanish-speaking, the Latin America, and even in Spain. I got involved with the issues around breast cancer when I was working in environmental and occupational epidemiology at the state of Oregon. And my cousin, at the age of 34, got inflammatory breast cancer. And she had 2 young kids. And it was, just devastating. At that time, this was 30 years ago now, no, 25 years ago. There were not good treatments for inflammatory breast cancer. Then my aunt got diagnosed. My best friend was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then another friend was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was just seeing so much of it around me. And eventually one of my stepmothers was diagnosed. And so I just really felt like this was an important issue for women, and I wanted to get more involved. I've been looking at the science behind it for many, many years. And then in the last 7 or so years, I have been working on issues around how to prevent breast cancer. So we actually call it risk reduction because we cannot prevent it. We cannot control some of the things that Brittany was talking about in the beginning, things like our genes, our family history. So we don't want to say that we can prevent it, but we do know that there are a lot of things that we can do to reduce our risk of breast cancer. And starting at a very young age, we know a lot now about how things in our early life actually impact our risk of breast cancer later in life. So I have been working on those issues of reducing the risk among multiple generations. And one of the really nice things is we work with a lot of researchers. So right now we've been working with a researcher in Berkeley who has found that things that a grandmother was exposed to can affect the age menarche in the granddaughters, and also her risk of gaining weight. And we know that those are things that impact our breast cancer risk. The other thing that I am working on, that I direct at Zero Breast Cancer, is how to improve the lives and wellness among people who have had breast cancer, and also to reduce the risk of getting breast cancer again. And so we have a lot of materials that we are producing right now in collaboration with experts and also with community. So at Zero Breast Cancer, we consider ourselves a bridge and trying to get the latest and best evidence that we have about what we can do, and sharing that with people from the affected communities so that we make sure that the messages are useful and engaging and actionable, things that people can actually do. The other thing that I always feel really strongly about emphasizing when I'm talking about the work that we do at Zero Breast Cancer is that this is not something that we can do alone. I loved what John Henry was saying earlier in the introduction to the show about doing things in community, because that is a big part of our health. Being in a place where we can safely go for walks, where there is a park available, where we have clean air, where we have a community and support, and can get the interactions, those connections that we need to be healthy, because all of those things are really important. So I hope that I'll be able to hear the rest of the questions as they come along and answer. And thank you so much for having me here and in such wonderful company. It's really great to hear these stories.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm just doing an audio check right now. Can you hear us right now? All right. Well, so I wanted to get back to talking about the symptoms, and then we actually will go in to talk more with Catherine Thompson about the importance of, increasing access to resources, to services, to information, which at a lot of times is lacking in our communities. But just to backtrack a little bit and just touch on those symptoms. What symptoms, Tiffany? You said you didn't have any symptoms, that you were just doing routine screening, which a lot of people do not do, which is
Yes.
very, very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit more about that.
I just was going in for my annual well woman exam, and even my physician, I think the recommendation is to have a clinical breast exam annually. And I even had a clinical breast exam, and my doctor did not feel anything in that exam. And I just she just sent me for my mammogram. And in the diagnostic screening, they found two tumors in my right breast. But I absolutely had no symptoms whatsoever, which is another testament to screening.
Yeah, it's very important. And then, that you were able to get that early diagnosis, which is also very important.
Right. My diagnosis was stage 1. And so I am very fortunate that I found it as early as I did. And I think back on that mammogram, and I think back to the fact that I was trying to put it off for as long as I could. And I put it off for maybe 2 months. And my doctor actually called me and reminded me that I needed to have that done. And I missed the appointment, but I was fortunate enough that I worked in a building. I work in healthcare, and I work in a clinic, and right upstairs is where the breast center was. So that my colleague said, Tiffany, just go get the mammogram. You can come right back. It's going to take 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, I can reschedule it. But I went up and did it. And one thing I wanted to add to the conversation is I was diagnosed on December 2nd, and had I been diagnosed December 2nd of 2020, it also would have been a very different story. And the fact that with COVID-19, my surgery would have been put off. So I think that that's something we should also be having a conversation about that, because we're going to be living with these COVID-19 types of restrictions for a little while longer. And I think my story could be different had I had the diagnosis come a year later.
Oh, yeah, that's very, very true. And, I think about the morning that I turned 40, I woke up that morning and I checked my phone, and I had a text message from Kaiser Permanente, and they were like, hi, happy birthday, time to get that mammogram.
Yes,
and I was like, oh man, I guess I'm there now. Time to go get my checkup.
It's time.
How about you, Dr. Kathy?
Well, with me, initially when I was 20, I found the lump myself because, back then it was very common for you to practice. They preached to you doing self exams. And so I done the self exam and found the mass. But at 20 years old, I kind of brushed it off. This couldn't be really what it was. And then I found that I was tired a lot. And then I was living away, and my parents asked me to come home. So I came back home and made an appointment with the doctor. And that day is always impacted into my mind, because when he did an exam and he literally squeezed a nipple, blood came out. And he was like, you're 20, this should not be happening. You should not be experiencing any type of discharge like this at 20 years old. So he sent me for a biopsy. And when I went for the biopsy was when they came back and told me that it was cancer. And at the time it was stage 2 at 20. So I was like, okay. And then, so it was a Friday that I had my biopsy done. And so it was football season. I was like, well, can I go home? And they were like, no. The doctor was so afraid that I was not going to come back if I had gone home. And he probably was right at 20, And so they kept me in the hospital over the weekend. And by that Sunday, they were prepping me for surgery the Monday, preparing me for a respirator and everything. And I was like, okay, this is really real. And that was my initial way of finding out was doing the breast self-exam. So if
Yeah.
you go into my bathroom right now in the shower, you will see a hang cord on breast self-exam. And they really don't make those anymore, like talking about it.
Not like they used to. You don't really see the resources and the information in a lot of community spaces, like it used to be everywhere. I feel like people recognize and celebrate, breast cancer month. Everybody goes out and they wear the pink and, it's a big ticket type of thing. But when it comes to actually increasing access, and making sure that our communities are educated and have the resources and know how to, take those tests. I feel like the resources are just not there. The information is not there like it used to be. And so I just wanted to hear like your opinions on why do you think that the mortality rates are so high among Black women? I believe when I was running down the statistics, I said that, 31%, the mortality rate is at 31% higher among Black women than any other race. And so just even talking about just the lack of access to resources, what else do you think it is?
I think environmental. I think it's stress. I think we have to bring into this conversations microaggressions that we experience every day and how that might impact your health. I think that there's just, I just think that could be environmental, but also I know personally, I am a person who I'll get to it when I get to it. I've got to get this done. And when I'm done, I'll get to that. And I'll get to that because it's important for me to take care of this, what I'm working on now. I'll get to it. I think there's a lot of that too. I don't know. I think it has to be a little bit of the mindset of it'll get done when it gets done. But I also think that it's environment and environmental stressors that also play a role.
Yeah.
Well, with me, I
can y'all hear me? Can I jump in?
Yes.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I want to second that and talk about our environment. Black and brown community, we are typically, impacted in areas of our community that are environmentally impacted with chemicals and different things of that nature. And how do we advocate and come together to have a call to action to fix those environmental issues in our community? Because other issues not to hit that hard, but it seems because where we live and some of the conditions that we face, especially here in San Francisco, with the shipyards and things of that nature, with lead, our community gets hit the hardest. So how do we come together and make this awareness and information possible for the ladies and the women of our community?
I think the best way to make this happen is to have this discussion that we're having right now. I don't think that, especially being from a family where there's no breast cancer in my family. I didn't talk about this with my mother. We never talked about breast cancer. We talked about all the other things, but I think having a discussion about it and starting to have the discussion about it and just make it easy to have that conversation too.
Exactly. I think that'd be powerful, though. Do you think with the testing, is it something that we could do like they've been doing for COVID, having more pop-up clinics and things of that nature? Like how do we get our Department of Public Health and different folks of that nature to have more community events? And I heard Brittany earlier say, this Breast Cancer Awareness Month seems to take off for the month of October, but then we lose steam throughout the year and kind of, the slogan nation that we have. Everybody's having these slogans and these parties for right now. But how do we keep that momentum continuing? Is it having more community pop-ups? These conversations definitely help, but how do we get these resources in the community to make sure that the community is impacted?
Well, at one time they used to provide free mammograms during the month of October. Now I don't really hear about a lot of that. Like I said, I was 20 when I was diagnosed. A mammogram is not recommended for 20-year-olds. So I would not have lived to 35, 40 to get a mammogram. I would have been dead. Right. They told me that if I had not had surgery and chemo, that I would have been dead in 5 years. So if I would have been dead in 5 years, I would have been 25, not 35 to even get a baseline mammogram. So I think the fact that I think healthcare is still limited to a lot of people, and that is a problem. And just like, I forgot your name, just like she was saying, though, it was not prevalent in my family neither. I had a cousin she and I are twice related. So it was hard to determine if it came from my grandfather's side of the family or from my grandmother's side of the family. But needless to say, she passed away from breast cancer during the time that I was fighting. And she and I, to my knowledge, were the only two within our family who had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And at the time, I was 20. And so she was 2 years older than me. And she was a pharmacist and married to a physician. So she was able to get some of the treatments that a lot of people were not able to get. She even went to Europe and did trial treatments, but it did not work for her. But there are some people that do not have health care that will provide them the opportunity to get the treatments and things that they need. Like I said, I live in Louisiana. Houston is about 2 hours from me. So I took the option of taking the drive to MD Anderson Cancer Center. A lot of people don't have that option because they may not have the insurance that MD Anderson takes and things like that. I grew up in an area where my parents told me, I'm the youngest of six, that in early years where they built the I-10 corridor used to be a landfill.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happened that basically everyone on the block where I grew up with died from some form of cancer. So I am one of the few survivors from that area. You know, there are people still living in that area. There are some who have moved there. There are housing projects near there. These people may not even know that this even existed. There's a railroad yard right there also. You know, there's always train spills and things like that. So in Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, Southeast Texas, we're known for our refineries and things like that. They just had an explosion last week. So we're not sure what we're introduced to within our bodies from the environment that we're in.
It's so very true. And for those that don't know, Houston, Texas is kind of like the hub for premier cancer treatment centers. Like there's a medical center in Houston, Texas that is like world renowned. There are a lot of world renowned facilities in that city. And a lot of people travel to Houston, Texas for care, for HIV care and for cancer treatment care. They're very well known for those type of treatments. And that's what they're talking about when they speak of MD Anderson and I-10, is that trek from Texas to Louisiana to care. That's the highway you're gonna take to care, I-10. So here in San Francisco, it's a little different. We do have like world renowned like hospital system. Well, one, no, two, Stanford and UCSF. World-renowned hospital care systems. I'm not sure where they stand when it comes to cancer treatment, but I'm sure it's top of the line as well. But they are not engaging communities to I'm not going to say my liking, but to a way that I'm knowing what's going on. And I did, before we move on, I did want to touch on something that LaToya, you had posted something in the chat when you spoke about the grind culture and how a lot of Black women are like so caught up in the grind culture that we kind of lose a sense of self and don't take care of ourselves. And, you know, when we talk about self-love, that's going to the doctors, putting yourself first. Yes, the stressors, addressing the stressors that we, embody, which can manifest in different ways, but, just taking care of ourselves and going to the doctors and, doing what we need to do to make sure that, we're staying healthy. And it's a prime example of, what Tiffany and Dr. Kathy said, is that they were doing their routines. They were going to the doctors and like getting themselves checked out, and that's how they found it. But if they did not, it would have been a totally different story. And so when we also talk about like the environmental impacts here in San Francisco, we too have a shipyard where historically naval ships that were coming, I guess, from like Hiroshima, but they had radioactive naval ships that were coming to San Francisco and were being cleaned on our shipyard docks. And so a lot of that radioactive toxicity is in our soil. And on the shipyard is where a lot of our our African-American communities are, our housing developments, our low-income housing sites, where they housed a lot of the people that used to work on these ships. So you have like generational environmental impacts that are like passing on through, families, cancers, sicknesses that are coming down the line, but they also have high rates of cancer in the Bayview community. There's actually right now a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit that's going on, class action suit, where a lot of people in the community are suing the contractor that was supposed to clean up the shipyards. But anyway, it contributes to the environmental impact that it has on our community and on our bodies. And that's what we're dealing with here in San Francisco. But even with that, you're still not seeing the increase to resources to medical services, like those pop-up mobile units, people going out doing these educational pieces. A lot of this stuff is missing in the community. And so with that, I just want to hear from you guys, like, what other factors do you think? So we've talked about the environmental stressors. We've talked about, the self-preservation that's not going on, the lack of resources. But is there anything else that you think that contributes to the mortality rates in Black women?
Well, I think we have a tendency of putting things off, like she mentioned also. If I'm not feeling well, I'm going to a doctor. Mm-hmm. But some people are like, oh, well, I'll wait. And sometimes that wait does not weigh the same,
Right.
putting it off, and then it may be too late. I lost a brother who was misdiagnosed here. And by the time we encouraged him to go to Houston, he was too fragile to go. So some things you can't put off for later. If you feel like you have an issue that needs to be addressed, then you need to make the opportunity to address it. I don't care if I have a nickel left. If I'm sick, I'm going to the doctor. They just going to have to bill me later because I'm here as long as God will allow me to be here. And therefore, I don't take anything for granted. Like right now, like Tiffany said, we're dealing with COVID and everything. So my goal is to stay as healthy as possible. Like I say, I teach at the college level, and I make sure that I'm well protected and that I take good care of myself, not only with my cancer diagnosis, but for anything that may be existing. Like I said, I had a lymph node transplant. I'm one of the few people in this area who have gone through it. Is working well. I want to make sure that I take good care of myself. And if I can encourage not only women, but there are men who get breast cancer as well, encourage anyone, to get checked. And I wish that they would definitely change the age of your first mammogram. A lot of us Black women will not be here to see a mammogram at 35 or 40. So because of the risk factors that we possess, then it should be changed so that it would meet the needs of women of color.
I second that. I work for Houston Methodist Hospital, and I know as a nurse, nurses are known for advocating for their patients. I don't know if I did that for myself. I don't know if I was advocating for myself, but I had a conversation with my mom. And when I got the diagnosis, one of the things she said to me, she said, now I know that you're going to an oncologist and they treat cancer. They treat breast cancer. That's what they do. But one of the questions she asked me, she said, what do they treat Black women with breast cancer? Is the treatment going to be different? And I think it would be amazing to have more research opportunities that actually focused on Black women and breast cancer. And I also, we have an organization here, it's called The Rose, and they do mobile mammography. And it's as simple, when I worked in public health, it's as simple as calling them and telling them you have 20 people that you are for sure you'll be able to get them a mammogram. They will show up, they will get screened. And I don't think that service gets used enough. I think that that's one of those organizations that they're just waiting to help and they're just waiting to participate, but don't have there's not a lot of people who are using their services. But I think taking mammography to people instead of having the people come to the mammography that could be super effective in getting people screened earlier. Just a thought.
just following up on what Tiffany was saying, and actually Dr. Kathy as well, I think it is really important when to have the services that are specific to the person. And two of the organizations that we work with are specifically, and thank you for putting those up, are the Tiger Lily Foundation, which is a national organization that helps women who have had breast cancer or who are getting diagnosed with breast cancer. And they have a program that we have joined where we all try to make sure that Black women are represented in everything that we do. And the other organization, we had a representative, one of the co-founders of the Touch Black Breast Cancer Alliance, on a webinar that we did about a month and a half ago. And she talked about the kinds of research that they are promoting. They are really pushing to have more research, clinical research done with Black women, because as she said, it is a different cancer. It can be a completely different cancer. And a lot of that is the triple negative breast cancer. We've also been working with a genetic researcher here in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's actually up at UC Davis now. And she's been finding some of these ancestry indicator markers, for example, that found differences between women who had more European descent versus more indigenous descent in terms of their risk. So we know that there can be some genetic differences, even though, we are so much alike, and that does not explain a lot of the all of the differences that in the rates of breast cancer. But there is a lot that we can do, a lot more that we can do. The other thing that I think is really important is finding an organization that can help to support the after a breast cancer diagnosis. So as I mentioned, Tiger Lily has some of that. We also work with the Women's Cancer Resource Center in Oakland, Berkeley. They're right on the border. I can't remember where they're at exactly now, but they have the Sisters Support Group, and they've been online with their since the began. They made a really quick turn to be able to have their support programs, their support groups be online. And they also have, for those in the Bay Area who may remember Faith Fancher, she was a news anchor who had breast cancer and actually passed away. Her foundation has moved there, and they have funding to help people with breast cancer who need emergency services and help.
Yes, I remember Faith Fancher very well. Growing up here, she was on the news, and then she was a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So shout out to my sorors as well. Can you talk a little bit more about the triple negative diagnosis? I know that it impacts majority Black women or American women with African descent. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It is so much more common among Black women, and that's one of the reasons why Black women have worse outcomes with breast cancer. We're getting a lot better treatment options because of groups like Touch Black Breast Cancer Alliance, but it is still much more aggressive and cancer form of breast cancer, and it tends to start earlier. So maybe not as early, hopefully, as Kathy's diagnosis, but I've lost several dear friends to triple negative breast cancer. There is an organization called the TBNC. I'll put that in the chat too. The Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation has some really good resources available. And so if you have specific questions about it, I can try to answer them. I'm not an expert, but it is definitely more prevalent in the Black community.
The interesting part with me was that one of my doctors stated that even though I identify as Creole, that my genetic makeup was more comparable to that of European descent. Well, I did my DNA. It came back 35% European, but both of my parents are of Creole descent also. So I'm
That's
not
great.
sure.
That's interesting too. That's really interesting.
I wanted to go ahead and jump in if it's okay. I'm Latoya Pitcher. I'm the Research and Development Director here with both sides of the conversation. But also one of my other hats that I wear, I am a policy and procedure equity, advocate for Black and Brown families here in San Francisco. And I've also done some work across the nation. But I'm always advocating to humanize our experiences in housing, education, health and wellness, as well as economics. And then listening to you ladies all talk about your stories personally and professionally with breast cancer, I have a few questions came up. So bear with me. I'll put them in the chat too, so you can respond to them. But the first thing that came up when Dr. Kathy was talking was I was thinking about, and I'm probably using the wrong term for it, but Black maps. So once upon a time, Black folks couldn't just travel all freely and stay in hotels wherever they wanted. But we had these little booklets that
The green books.
What is it called?
The green books.
The green book. There we go. The green book. See, I knew somebody would know. The green books, and it would tell us where it was safe to go eat, where it was safe to lodge, what cities we shouldn't stop in after sundown, aka sundown towns. And as Brittany talked about earlier in the Bayview Hunters Point area here in San Francisco, most of my generation, which is Generation X, and definitely the baby boomer generation, but not so much as Generation Z, this generation right up under us, really know about the history of the contamination and its impact on the residents. Like she said, from cancers and asthma rates like through the roof in District 10. And so it made me think about another area in District 10 in San Francisco, not Bayview, but on the other end of District 10, it's the Crocker Amazon area. And at one point there was a housing development there, and it was tore down because it was causing cancer. It had been proven there was something cancerous on the site. But now there's this beautiful park there. And I didn't even know until I took my kids to the park, and I'm on the phone with my mom, and she's like, "Hey, where you at? Where are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm with the kids at Crocker Amazon." She's like, "Girl, get out of there." I'm like, "What? What's going on?" She was like, "That's the cancer park." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, it used to be some cancer projects over there, and they tore it down." And one of my aunts through marriage, she actually grew up there. She's in her 60s, and she is a 4-time cancer survivor. And so I was listening to Dr. Kathy's story. I'm like, man, I wonder if people who bought houses in those areas, in that area now, who may not have been here 40 years ago, know the history of where they bought and what they're potentially exposing their family to. And I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a green book for cancer around the nation as to where to buy, where to vacation, where to go swimming and that type of thing? So that's the first one. The second one was as someone who experienced poor healthcare when delivering my children in the hospital. And I had a really good job with really good benefits, some of the best in the country. And I was still treated substandardly. I was treated subhuman. And so I could only imagine what it must be like as a cancer patient going through this experience. And my sister is also a cancer survivor. She just went through her surgery last year. She did not need a mastectomy, but she did have parts removed. And just remembering and thinking about for whatever reason, the embarrassment and talking about it initially up front, and also just maybe embarrassment's not the right word, but just her emotions around it. Like, how are we supporting our folks? I know in my grandmother's day, they had like candy stripers in the hospitals to keep folks' spirits up. But what is my generation, the millennial generation, what are we doing to keep our folks' spirits up in this same way? Because, in the maternity wards, you have doulas and midwives that can support that. But what about in the chemotherapy ward? Like, what are we doing there? And then the final one, and I'll shut up, is around nutrition. Are there foods that we should avoid? I know when I was initially diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, I was always told pick fresh, then frozen, and then this, processed food, the preservative stuff. But are there any links to, or any documented links, or not even documented, but any foods that folks should try to avoid or maybe should eat more of to prevent or intervene in cancer?
Well, when I was initially diagnosed at 20, my doctor told me to stay away from fried foods, foods that were high in fat and, cholesterol and things like that, to eat more like fruits and vegetables and, I guess, naturally grown products. But if it's coming out of the same earth that is contaminated grounds, then I mean, it's kind of hard to say what is good for you and what is not, And on the other question that you mentioned, well, not so much question, but that you stated about your sister with embarrassment, I thank God I've never been embarrassed about what I went through, because I've always said that it's not something that I did to contract breast cancer. It was a cross that God gave me to bear. And so therefore I've never been embarrassed. At 20, I was never embarrassed. If you ask me, I tell you. And I felt like if what I had experienced could save someone else, then I felt like my job on earth was well done. So I've never been ashamed. And I am so thankful, because a lot of people, a lot of women who are near me will reach out to me and ask me. I had one ask me, she come and asked me if I thought that she should have a double mastectomy because she had been diagnosed. The final decision is hers. I didn't try to sway her one way or the other, but I tried to give her the encouragement that she needed as a survivor. If it's not good for you, let it go. Like I said, I have 2 daughters and 2 grandchildren. So, and I have family that love me. I have my sister-in-law sitting here right now who opened up her home to me every time that I had to go to Houston and took care of me, wasn't afraid to help me with drain tubes and everything. And I am blessed because those that care will outweigh those that don't care. So that's how I look at it. So if I could be a positive vessel for someone else, then I am thankful for what I can do to help someone. It's not always about money or things. Sometimes it's just being a listening ear. Sometimes it's providing a ride. I had friends offer me a ride. I had friends that drove me, friends that I went to school with that relocated to the Houston area, that picked me up when my sister-in-law had to go back to work and things, and took me to appointments. So for that, I'm grateful. So therefore, I should be able to do the same for someone else who is in the same position that I once was in. It's about surviving.
Mm-hmm.
My type of cancer that I had was liked estrogen. Estrogen caused my cancer to grow. So when I first was diagnosed, my doctor told me to stay away from foods that had phytoestrogens. I think I'm saying that correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so to stay away from foods that could cause me to have to cause the cancer to grow. So when I was first diagnosed, that's what my oncologist told me. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm basically in menopause, and so I'm burning up. So sorry. Sorry. So I just have
this treatment. Yeah.
But anyway, it's a part of the being a survivor, and I'll take that any day of the week. My experiences in the hospital and seeing my providers, I think I am very fortunate because I sought treatment at the same organization that I work. And whenever any nurse, physician, or anyone would pull up my record, it's an automatic, you have to break the glass. So everyone is like, oh, wait, you must be an employee. And I can definitely say for my very first surgery, before anyone logged on, they were like, yes, ma'am, you need to put that on. You need to put that there. You need to go sit right there. And then when they found out I was an employee, things changed. They were more welcoming. They were a little bit more warm. When I was hospitalized a few months ago, the treatment that they gave me, I think, was beyond what they would do for any other patient. because I was like, you guys, we're good in here, I'm fine. But they wanted to check on me, make sure I had my food, make sure the temperature was great. And I've been a bedside nurse, and I knew that we didn't have time for that. So I know that it was definitely due to the fact that I was an employee, and I think I made that choice to be seen at Houston Methodist because of that too. I think that played a role also. I don't know. I don't know about the green book. I don't know how to answer that question. That's a good one. That's a really good one. My husband is actually from Nebraska, and we were driving to New Orleans at one point, and he was like, well, we need to stop for gas. And we got to Viter, and I was like, we're not stopping here.
Not in Viter, Texas.
No, we will not. No, we will not. We're going to find another stop. So, but that's just been my experience. That's been my experience. Sorry while I fan. Sorry. I'm really hot.
No, please, you got to be comfortable. That is the most important thing.
Yeah, there's Viter and Cut and Shoot, Texas.
So I am so impressed, Dr. Kathy and Tiffany, with your stories because, having that help, having those people who really are paying attention and helping you get the rides that you need and giving that personal care when you're in the hospital or even just there for a checkup, that is not something that always happens. And one of the things that I work with the Latino Cancer Institute and a number of other organizations on is patient navigation, so that you have somebody there who can help you through this process and make sure that you are getting what you need. So, for example, I was just up in Oregon helping one of my stepmothers with her cancer treatment last week. And she, her friend was sick one day, and so she didn't have a ride there. So she drove herself to get her cancer treatment. And, that is not the best way to go. It's so much better. And there is help out there oftentimes, but it can be really hard to find. So we really want to, one of the things that we're really pushing for is to have a policy change so that it gets paid for by by health insurance, by Medicare, by whatever program is out there, so that people can have the help that they need. And not just for the medical side, but also like Kathy, we know a lot about financial toxicity. I think that was one of the things you brought up, Latoya, that about the economics. You were talking about, the people who need more help. And, there are programs like mentioned the Faith Fancher, but then there's also, I'll put it in here too, there's also an organization called Triage Cancer that can help people who are working and they have legal issues or who need help finding the kinds of financial resources that will help them out with the activities of daily living or whatever else they need. The other thing that you mentioned, the whole Green Book idea, there in California, we actually have a database online where you can look and see what kinds of contaminants there are in the area you live. And it's called Cal Enviro Screen. I'm going to put that in there too. And it's part of the Cal EPA. And you can search by area to find out. So if you're looking to buy a place or rent a place or even a park that you might be going to, you can see what is been there on that land in the past, if there were toxic chemicals that might still be there, as well as if there's air pollution levels there are higher than elsewhere. So that's only in California so far. I don't know of another state that has anything quite like it, but that is a really important point. What happened there? Like Dr. Kathy was saying in Louisiana, there's a lot of contamination.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I agree with you saying the Environmental Protection Act, which is the EPA, they actually have a map that highlights Superfund sites across the country. And the Superfund is basically like highly contaminated areas that meet all the criterias that EPA is like, you need to watch this neighborhood because it's going to kill people. And actually, if you put in 94124, which is, the Bayview zip code, Bayview used to be I don't know if it still is, but historically it was a Superfund site. And when I say fund, FUND, Superfund. Not super fun, because nothing fun about toxic, but yeah.
The shipyards there, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was a lot of contamination.
Exactly. So yeah, you can search it, but thank you for sharing that link, because that'll definitely help you find those areas.
I forgot one other thing I wanted to mention. And that was about diet, nutrition. So we have learned so much more over the last 20, 30 years. And we have found that a Mediterranean diet, or what's sometimes called a DASH diet, one that's supposed to be heart healthy, we have found that is actually protective against cancer. And now we also know that those phytoestrogens, those nutrients that come from plants like soy and yams, that those are not related to any increase in cancer risk or in recurrence of cancer. What they found is that if you take a really concentrated dose, like in pill form or something, that could be a problem. We don't know what that might do, but that eating natural foods is actually always going to be really good for you. So plant-based diets, high fiber is one of the few things that we have found that is protective against breast cancer. But I'm working actually with some researchers right now who are looking at diet, and we've got a cohort of breast cancer survivors that we've been following now for almost 20 years. And so it's pretty impressive. Oh, the sister study too. So, there's work going on, but diet is a really hard one to do. But we do know that, whatever the healthy foods are, that are high in fiber, low in sugar, and again, not processed, like you were saying, Tiffany. So those are important things too. And getting enough sleep.
That's all very, very important. So another thing that I wanted to touch on, that I know that we talked about a little bit, was your experiences going through the treatment process. In the African American community, there's a lot of medical mistrust, which keeps people from going to the doctors and maintaining their care, and monitoring their care and things like that. And I'm just wondering, how important do you think it is that hospitals incorporate culturally responsive care into the treatment plan? Did you ever face anything that you felt like, culture should have played a hand in, especially, I don't know if, well, Tiffany, I know that you didn't lose your hair through your treatment process, but, a lot of women in the past have, and, our hair is our glory, especially when we have locks and, beautiful tresses. And a lot of times, things like that aren't taken into account when, navigating Black women through this process. And so I just wanted to hear from you all, with your experiences, how important is culturally responsive care in this?
I think it makes all the distant difference. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Kathy.
I didn't have any major issue. I lost a little bit of hair, but my hair is actually long. I had mostly experienced thinning. Like I said, my initial surgery when I was 20, when I had the reconstruction, by the time I went to MD Anderson 29 years later, they totally disagreed with my reconstruction. Actually, if you were to see my file, it says deformed reconstruction. So they went in and they revised everything. I had a sectional mastectomy on the right side. I never had told you guys what they actually did on the right side, but I had a sectional mastectomy, and then I opted for the tram flap. It was only one person at MD Anderson that I felt like she and I were not on the same page, and she was a physician assistant at the time. And so I expressed my concern to my doctor, and then I wound up with a different physician assistant assisting him. A thing that I have an issue with, getting back to the care of us as whether we're patients or survivors, is the insurance companies as well. Because I remember when I got ready for my sectional mastectomy, that the insurance approved me for 1 day hospital stay. I'm like, are they serious? Are they serious? And so I told my doctor, I'm like, I don't care how many days they say, whatever you say is what would matter to me. It doesn't matter what they say. I will deal with that once I get up off the operating table and feeling better. But right now is what you think is in my best interest to sustain my life. I think regardless, we pay for our insurance in some form or fashion. So we should not allow our care to be totally dependent upon what the insurance company says, because we're paying the premiums for them to have a job. They're not medical doctors. They're representatives working for the insurance company. So what may be an umbrella for one person may not be the same umbrella for another person. I mean, Tiffany and I both had breast cancer, but what we experienced may have been totally different, So one umbrella worked for me in 1989 will not work for her in 2020 when she had her diagnosis, or for me in 2018 when I had my second diagnosis. So I think we as people give too much power to the insurance companies too, because after all, unless you have an employee that's paying 100% of your insurance benefits, then you have a say in what your care should be like. And that is my take on that.
Absolutely. I feel like, so I'm a nurse and I'm assertive. I know what questions to ask. If one of my family members is sick, they're at the doctor's office, I'm telling them, you need to tell them they need to run this test, and they need to do this. When it comes to myself, I found myself, so I went to see my breast surgeon, I saw a plastic surgeon, I saw the oncologist, and they would just put all the information out there, and I just kind of sat there and nodded, just because I felt like I didn't understand how to advocate for myself. But so I had initial appointments across the board with tons of doctors, but I found myself, it was most comfortable for me to ask questions online, to go into my chart and say, so I asked my breast surgeon, and I was like, and I know that these things are not, I understand science. I know science and I know medicine, but I asked my breast surgeon, I said, so how you're going to go about doing this mastectomy? Is it going to be different for me as a Black woman as it is for someone else? I asked my oncologist, I said, is this the same treatment you would give to a white woman that's 44 and stage 1? Is this the same thing? So I didn't think that I didn't ask those questions until I had that conversation with my mom, but I didn't feel comfortable having that conversation face to face. I felt like I could get behind a computer keyboard and say all the things I wanted to say. But I personally think that my care was the gold standard. I think that they did everything that they were supposed to do. But I also have to say that I know that I am incredibly blessed. I have a good job. I work for a great organization. I have this incredibly supportive family, friends, Brittany. I have an incredible support group around me. And so I think that my experience is very different than a lot of women's, which is unfortunate because I feel like this is how I have been treated and how I have gone through treatment through cancer, through this diagnosis should be how everyone experiences it. I do want to say that, I know that there's the medical piece that's important, but I also think that we should be talking about the psychological piece too. I am a survivor. I know I'm going to be fine. I know that I got a new set. I mean, it can't be bad, right? So, I mean, so it can't be all bad, but at the same time, it is something to process later on, thinking that, you know, you have cancer, you have this risk. So I think that's another piece of my treatment that I wish would have been added from the beginning and not years later, 2 years later. I wish that I would have I wish I would have gone to the support groups. I wish that I would have talked to someone to talk me through that, because my family loves me. My husband loves me. My mom loves me. Everyone loves me, and they all want me to be fine. But at the end of the day, I'm the person that has the breast cancer, and I'm the one that has to process that. So I wish that would be a part of treatment, like an automatic piece of treatment, to have the ability to speak to someone about it.
And I agree with Tiffany on that, because at 20, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I went to the American Cancer Society, and they tried to match me up with someone in bosom buddies. And all of them were much, much older than me. So there was nothing that we had in common except the fact that we both were diagnosed with breast cancer. This time around, with the second diagnosis and the sectional mastectomy, well, you know, I'm more academically inclined. I'm a researcher by profession. You know, my doctorate is in education. So I asked all the questions that Tiffany felt like she needed to ask behind the keyboard. I'm a very assertive person. So I'm going to ask what I need to ask. And as a matter of fact, I developed, because of that, like I said, I had an issue with one of the PAs, and I expressed my issue and, you know, preferred that she no longer be assigned to my care. And that was worked out. I've made personal friends with some that were just my professional staff, my care team, that I have personal relationships with now, down to the CNA who took care of me in the hospital, who has become my personal friend also. But so I'm very assertive when it comes to my care, as well as those that I encounter now, people who come to me for help, people that I feel as though I can help be there and walk them through and be part of their support team. Because at 20, I didn't have anyone. And actually, I did at one point experience that depression of feeling different at one point, because I was so young. And, you know, my former schoolmates and everything, they were going on with their lives, and my dreams were deferred. They were not denied, they were definitely deferred, because I still went on and did what I wanted to do career wise. But initially I felt like I had been dealt a bad hand at one point, you know, that the goals and dreams that I had aspired were not going to come into fruition. But actually, I kept pursuing, and never let anything get me down, you know. So I had good days and bad days. You know, we're human. We will. I still do. I have bad days sometimes, you know, with the fact that I've lost my husband so long, because he was killed in a motorcycle accident. So it's not like he was ill or anything. So, you know, there are a lot of things that have come against me, but I still keep my faith, and I keep pushing forward to do the things that I think are right and decent and in order. So I try to be that person for those that are going through it now, because I didn't have that when I was 20.
Yeah. Catherine, what about the services that you provide in your organization? Do you provide any programs or resources that are specific to Black women, or, you know, just unique to different cultures, or anything around that?
We do try to, yes. We actually are not a service organization. We're more of an outreach and education group. So what we do is we try to work with people from different communities to make sure that the materials that start from things for young kids, so we have healthy activities booklets, that those are appropriate for different cultures. So right now we have those in English, Spanish, French and Tagalog. And then we also have one, we worked with the rural California Indian Health Board to create one that is for Native American youth. And then we have materials that are for teens, and those are in different languages. We have things about puberty that we mentioned earlier. You know, menarche is one of those risk factors. So what we do during puberty actually affects our lifelong risk. That's one of the things we found out, unfortunately, from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The people who were going through puberty were at much higher risk. And now we know also that people who are exposed to DDT are at like much higher risk of breast cancer later in life. So, you know, we do know a lot of these things that we can do, and our organization then tries to make those available. That's one of the reasons that we work with organizations like Tiger Lily and also with the Women's Cancer Resource Center to make sure, and with, you know, survivors of a real variety of geographic areas, from different countries of origin, Black women, Latinas, et cetera, just to make sure that we can make different resources, we can make information available that will be useful. So one of the things that's been most of use, and we did a survey and found out that memory problems from chemo, as well as the cancer itself, and neuropathy, the pain related to cancer, those were things that people didn't feel like they knew enough about, or they felt like were ignored by the healthcare system.
Yeah. Something else that doesn't often get talked about, and I'm a big sexual health educator here in the community. And I work with a lot of women that, you know, after they've gone through treatment, you know, they're dealing with low sex drive, vaginal dryness, you know, after they've gone through treatment, you know, and their body changes. They struggle with regaining like that femininity and like, you know, feeling like a whole woman again, which are things that are often overlooked because a lot of women deal with that. And even though, you know, people have different experiences with their treatment, you know, you're still dealing with the essence of being a woman, you know, and navigating that throughout the whole treatment process too. And so I wanted to hear from you all. You know, you don't have to go into too deep, you know, talking about your sex drive, but unless you want to, because, you know, I can go there. I can talk about sex all day. But, you know, what are some of like, what did you do to like, you know, to keep that essence, like, you know, that femininity, that self-care, to keep you feeling beautiful, you know, throughout your process?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've tried to do, I've not been really good at it, but staying active and trying to maintain body weight. I think that there's not a lot of discussion about how women feel, what they look like when they look in the mirror. So I have breasts, I have the same nipples, I have all that, but my body is just different. It's not mine. They're not like, it's not what I was born with. So it is, and I think that that's the part of my psychological thing that I have going on now, is trying to get comfortable with that. But your body is just different. It's very different. And my gynecologist has probably been the only person to address it. And so I think the only reason she was able to address it is because she shared with me that she was a survivor as well. So she was able to point out, she put me on a few different supplements that have helped a lot. I mean, they have not ended the hot flashes, but they're better. So she told me about several different supplements to take that would help with hot flashes, that help with vaginal dryness, things like that. So, and I don't know if I'd have had that same response from someone who's not a survivor, but she definitely, and she was a young survivor also in her 40s. So yeah, your body is different. And I think that's something that you have to, that all weighs in also. Along with the treatment, what you're eating, you also have to be comfortable with getting back to being comfortable with this new body that you have.
Well, with me, I had a hysterectomy in my early 30s because I started having a lot of problems after the chemo and everything. I was told that I was not going to have any children. Both my girls were born after the chemo treatment, but my female issues did not get any better. So I wound up having a complete hysterectomy at like 31. And I was married at the time. So sexually, it helps when your mate lets you know you're beautiful, regardless. When they can't see the scores that you see, or when the score doesn't make a difference in the way that they feel, then that makes a difference in how you feel. So to have someone that is very supportive helps a whole lot. With me, I like wearing pretty dresses and dressing up and wearing makeup and everything. So, wearing the mask here is still mandatory, so I don't wear a lot of makeup anymore. But, being the best me helped me feel better about me. And even when I was on chemo, a lot of people would get sick after they take chemo. But I would always make that my time where I would come home and wash my car. Because if I preoccupied myself with something other than going to bed, then I found that I felt better than if I had gone to bed. If I went home and lay it down after I had chemo, then of course I'm going to feel sick. But if I already planned my day, then I felt like by the time I get in the house, I'm too tired to remember that I was supposed to be sick. So that helped a whole lot. Now that I'm a widow and not seeing anyone, I'm just more into taking care of me physically and mentally. And if God see fit for a companion or mate to come, then so be it. But at the meantime, I'm okay with being who I am.
Yes. And Catherine, do you all do any outreach around sexual health education? And is there any information that goes out into the community around, just coping with self-image, sexual health, just anything around that?
That is actually a really important issue for a lot of women, and it can be really hard for people to bring it up. I've talked to a lot of the breast care coordinator people who are working at different cancer centers. So we're actually going to be working on a fact sheet to help people with that. So right now, we're still directing people to the NIH or NCI, the National Cancer Institute's website, which you posted a minute ago. And they have some really good information, because when women lose a breast or even have a lumpectomy or have treatment, that can really affect how they feel about themselves. And so that is a really important issue.
And a lot of people, just to, talk about a resource out there. In my past life, I used to work in fashion, and I worked with Nordstrom's a lot. And Nordstrom's actually has a whole department geared towards helping women, regain that sense of self after breast cancer surgery. And so you can actually go in there and, make a private appointment and get fit for bras and prosthetics and, a makeover and, just like a whole, treatment that Nordstrom provides that a lot of people don't know. So, if ever you are looking for a place to go, you can always start there. Nordstrom's, that's my place. All right, I see that John is back on. John, I hope you're having fun. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything, but we were gonna head towards the closeout. I wanted to let everyone, give like their final words and, any closing remarks, but I didn't know if John had anything to say. It looks like he's kind of frozen over there. Oh. All right, well, we're gonna keep on rolling. And so, when we get towards the end of the show, we like for each of our members, each of our participants to like give some, closing remarks, reflections from the conversation, and just anything else that you want to put out there about your experience and just even your time on the show. And then we're going to ask each panelist to go through and, give their closing remarks. And then I usually close out with like a call to action where I talk to, the community and like community organizations and just kind of recap and, give my 2 cents on, what we can do as a community to, build accountability in, saving our communities, when it comes to like prevention, when it comes to healthy eating, when it comes to increasing access to those necessary resources that we need. A lot of times, we try to, we kind of depend on, government resources or hospital resources when sometimes the power is in our own community and, taking a stance, whether it's against environmental, inactions, whether it's against, the food deserts, whatever it is that we need to ensure that our communities are healthy so that we can prevent and fight, whatever comes against us. And so I like to always close the show, just giving that call of action so that we, collectively can rise and grow up together. And so I would like to go ahead and, start with you, Dr. Kathy, if you have any final remarks or words that you would like to leave us with.
First of all, I enjoyed being part of this panel today. Thank you for the opportunity. I believe that regardless to what we go through, that we are all beautiful in our own way. So always remember that despite what you may be going through, you are beautiful, and that there's always someone somewhere who may be going through more. My motto that got me through my time of trials was mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. So I live by that. If you don't mind, it does not matter. So if I could just continue to be an encouragement to someone else, then I feel as though I greatly have done my service. Also, for those who are battling, I wish everyone much success and prayer. Those who have lost, I lost a cousin, as I told you, and I lost a sister-in-law to breast cancer. And I pray that their souls rest in eternal peace, and all those who may have lost a loved one to this disease. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Tiffany, any last words, closing words?
So one of the things when I was originally diagnosed, I posted on Facebook, and I think once that very first time that you put it out there in the world, you say the words, I have breast cancer, it makes it super real. But the one thing I know is I made that Facebook post and I had hundreds of comments. And the thing that I took away from that was the most important that I want to share with everyone is just to simply get screened, just to go through the screening. And I had so many people call me, text me, post on that post. I made my appointment. I'm going tomorrow. And so I think the thing that the takeaway for me is just screening, and like take your sister with you, your sister, your friend, take them with you, because it can't be. You have to know. You just have to know that's not something that you can just let go, and you have to take care of yourself. But it's been a pleasure to talk with you ladies this afternoon. Dr. Kathy, I'm so inspired by your story. And so I just appreciate all of you and all the information that was shared today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Catherine?
Let's fight to change the age of getting the first mammogram too. We really need to fight for that. And ladies, I enjoyed being on, as I said, and I did include my phone number in the comments.
Okay.
Stay
Perfect.
in touch.
Thank you. Thank you. And just out of curiosity, what age do you think? If we are changing the age, what age do you think it should be?
25 to 30.
25.
Because by 25, most young ladies, majority have had at least one kid by 25 now. So, which means their body has gone through an increase in hormones and have experienced some other changes. So I would say 25 to 30. 35 is too late. I would have been dead a long time before that.
Yeah.
I feel that
varies so much because, you know, for somebody who doesn't have any family history and is, you know, Northern European, or not Northern European, is indigenous to the Americas, you know, those people are going to have a much lower risk. And so there, and the other thing that I worry about is mammograms are not a really perfect. They're not perfect by a long shot. And so, you know, what I really would like to see is a much better, more comfortable kind of screening test, and one that doesn't have, you know, any radiation. It's a very, very small amount, but I just, there's some research going on right now to try to figure out, you know, how for different populations we can figure out what the best age is. And, you know, it really varies, I think, by person. So, you know, that's a really tough one.
Well, like I said, I wouldn't consider having a family history, but maybe it would be by race or whatever, culture or something. But I think it needs to be changed. And that could be a reason why we are losing so many African American women to this disease at this late in the game.
Yep, late
You know,
diagnosis.
by now we should have a better handle on controlling, you know, the number of women that we're losing now, and we still don't.
Right. And there are, you know, genetic tests. So those are getting better, and those can also help us to know who should be starting earlier. So I think that should be much more widely available. Of course, we also need to make sure that people have the counseling that they need when they are getting those genetic tests, because it can be, you know, really scary, or you can, you know, get the information has to be really reliable.
And the finances to take the test.
Exactly.
Are the means. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Catherine, did you have any closing remarks? Any final words that you wanted to give us?
You know, it has been such an honor for me to be here with Dr. Kathy and with Tiffany, and of course with Brittany and LaToya too, and John Henry, now that he's back kind of. And, you know, I just really want to make sure that everybody remembers that there are things that we can do for our health, and also for the health of our kids, our nieces and nephews, and for our community. So it's so important that we do what we can to make sure that we are as healthy as possible, and that our communities, that's the norm in our communities, and that we start at an early age, so that we can survive things like breast cancer if we get it, and that we can hopefully not get diabetes and some of those other diseases. So thank you for having me on with these wonderful people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. LaToya, any final words for us?
Yes, I just want to say that I am definitely moved and inspired by you all. Definitely by your stories and your experiences with cancer, but just as listening to you, as just being human beings, as being women, and as being brave enough to speak up in a space like this. So thank you very much, because I'm sure you guys probably already know, but just this information is probably going to save at least one life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's when we know our job is done. If just at least one life is changed, we have served our purpose. And that's very important. I don't know if John, if you can hear us or not, if you wanted to say any closing words, or if he just wanted to be seen. Oh, here he comes with all the ruckus. John, do you have any final words?
I'm so sorry I can't hear y'all. I'm in the community. Thank you all. I've been listening. I'll go back and follow up tonight and reach out to you. You are in the community. You are blessed with a number of community organizations. All I want to say is, we're praying for all of you all. Continue to do the things that you need to do for awareness of breast cancer. Take care of yourself. We love you all at both sides of the conversation. And we'll see you this Tuesday for another one of our amazing hidden gem segments. I apologize for being out in the community, but there's a lot going on. And you know, both sides of the conversation, we are about the community, we're about the people. And we love you all. Thanks for today's conversation. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you all in the future. And I'll be in studio next time to have those difficult conversations with you all. Thank you all for holding it down on both sides of the conversation team. And we out here in the community. We'll see you all soon.
Yeah, all of that. All of that. Now, one thing you know about John Harry, John Harry gonna be in the community. So I'm just glad that he trusts me enough to hold down the show, me and Latoya enough to hold down the show today while he's out in the community handling his business. But I just want to close out by thanking you, ladies. This was such a wonderful conversation today. I'm just so happy to hear, that there's outreach happening in the community, that, we have these wonderful stories of survival that we can be encouraging to other women. And, and just get the information out there for somebody that, might be scared or may not trust the system or just don't know what to do to make that first step into, going to the doctors or getting care, getting treatment. And so I just hope, again, that we were able to provide enough information or a lot of information to be able to, move just that one person. And so for my call to action is I'm pretty much reiterating what everyone has said in their closeout. One thing that stood out to me is that there is definitely a need for a support network. So any woman that is going through treatment, you shouldn't have to go through this alone. And so if you are somebody, have a friend or a loved one that has a diagnosis and is going through treatment, to please step up and support that person in any kind of way. Just hearing from what the ladies were saying today, all you can do, you can open up your home, you can stop by to pay someone a visit, bring them a meal, just even simple phone calls or text messages just to check on their well-being, accompanying them to the doctors, helping them to come up with questions in case there's some sort of fear or they don't know what to ask. But no one should have to go through this alone. So a support network is definitely important. And if you don't have anyone in your family circle or your friendship circle that you feel comfortable talking to, there's a lot of organizations out there that we heard of today that can match you with somebody, or they can connect you to a support group or, or resources so that you, again, can get that help navigating the system. And so this is just very important, just making sure that you are connected to someone and that you do not go through this alone. And as community members, step up. If you hear somebody, your neighbor, it takes nothing to pick up the phone and call and check on somebody. So just the little things can really impact somebody in the greatest way and they'll never forget it. So please just remember, be a support to somebody else. It's very important. The second thing is I'm seeing that there's still a need for more increase of health education, resources, and engagement services. At one point, in the city or even across the country, I've seen where there's mammogram mobiles. I've seen simulations where, you can, touch different types of breasts to figure out how to find the lump. There's all kind of engaging, programs and resources that are out there. And I understand that we've been in a pandemic, but now is the time that we can gear those up and start getting back into the community and getting that information out there. The issues of the community did not go away just because we're in COVID. The issues and disparities are still there and they still need to be addressed. And just ensuring that whatever programs that we're putting out there, that they're culturally responsive, that if it's African-American women that are highly impacted, then we want to make sure that the information that we're putting out there has Black faces on it, that is, culturally relatable, that, people can look at and see that identify with. Even if we're talking about healthy eating, we want to make sure that the foods and the recipes that we're educating our community on are still culturally responsive and something that African Americans can take in and that will utilize and just won't go over our heads. And then lastly, the call is to the community is just to stay knowledgeable about your community. What Latoya was saying earlier about the green map, I didn't even think about that. When I'm looking for neighborhoods that, I want to make sure that I'm moving into a place that's healthy, that, has access to food that is not that has access to healthy streets and, to healthy options. Like all of these things are important when you are looking for communities to live in and to buy homes in. All of this stuff is important. And then, lastly, it's important for us to stay on top of our healthcare. Go to the doctors. Just going to your simple annual appointment can save your life. I know women who have gone 10 years without getting a pap smear. Those are not wise decisions. This is something that you have to do every other year, if not every year, depending on what risk, come through your family. But all you have to do is just make the choice just to go to the doctors. Just stick to those annual checkups. They can save your lives. It can open doors to, you finding out about, just anything, mammograms, heart disease, diabetes, all of these things that can be found just by going to the doctors. And a lot of this stuff can be prevented just by living a healthy lifestyle. And so, this is just something that we as a community must, take seriously, is the importance of just going to the doctors. It's very important. And that's all I have for you all today. I just want to thank you all for joining us. We'll be back next Sunday. We will be talking about, actually, I don't remember, I'm sorry. We're talking about domestic violence. I'm sorry, we'll be talking about domestic violence next Sunday. So we thank you all for joining us. And once again, I just want to thank our panelists. Thank you, LaToya, for joining me today. I was super nervous doing this show by myself, but it wasn't that bad. So thank you for your support as well. And I thank you all again. And everyone have a good evening and afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.